It's 10 o'clock in the UK, 1 p.m. here in Alaska. I'm Mark Austin, live in Anchorage, ahead of tomorrow's summit between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. The US president will fly in tomorrow morning. He says he is the man to persuade the Russian leader that now is the time for a ceasefire.
If I weren't president, in my opinion, he would much rather take over all of Ukraine. But I am president, and he's not going to mess around with me.
Also, warm words from the Kremlin, with Vladimir Putin praising Donald Trump's efforts to end the war. Volodymyr Zelensky meets Sir Keir Starmer 4,500 miles away from this summit, but Donald Trump says he will have a seat at the table next time. The eyes of the world are on this corner of America for this symbolic, historic meeting.
Also ahead on News at 10, isolated, scared and alone. An inquest jury says a teenage girl who died on a children's mental health ward was unlawfully killed.
Minister, if this is the end of a Palestinian state, what do you want to happen to the Palestinian people?
We confront the Israeli minister whose plan for a new settlement in the West Bank has drawn international condemnation.
I got 3 A's.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing! Well done!
Plus, the results are in. Top A-level grades are up, but the regional divide is clearer than ever. Now we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through until midnight.
Good evening from Anchorage in Alaska. In less than 24 hours, Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin will meet here for talks which could mark a turning point in the war in Ukraine. It will be their first meeting in 6 years, and the mood is positive at the moment on both sides, but the pair will sit down without Volodymyr Zelensky, and while Donald Trump says the Ukrainian leader will attend the next meeting, that all hinges on what happens here tomorrow. Our US correspondent James Matthews has our first report this evening.
Alaska, it's where east meets west. Beneath its mountain ranges, it's where Trump meets Putin. Just a few miles of water separate this corner of the United States from Russia. At the sharp end of the Cold War, Alaska has known confrontation across the sea. Missile bunkers speak of history past as modern history plays out. The Russian bear at the back door, back in the fold. Time and Trump have warmed the Cold War chill. Next steps revolve around this summit. From the protagonists, the previews are in.
I want to tell you about the stage we're at with the current American administration, which, as everyone knows, is making, in my opinion, quite energetic and sincere efforts to stop the hostilities, stop the crisis, and reach agreements that are of interest to all parties involved in this conflict, in order to create long-term conditions of peace between our countries, and in Europe and in the world as a whole.
The US president spoke at an Oval Office news conference.
I think it's going to be a good meeting, but the more important meeting will be the second meeting that we're having. We're going to have a meeting with President Putin, President Zelensky, myself, and maybe we'll bring some of the European leaders along, maybe not. I don't know that it's going to be very important. We're going to see what happens. And I think President Putin will make peace. I think President Zelensky will make peace. We'll see if they can get along. And if they can, it'll be great. If I weren't president, in my opinion, he would much rather take over all of Ukraine. But I am president, and he's not going to mess around with me.
An F-15 marks the spot where he'll meet his Russian counterpart. Ahead of an unpredictable encounter at this US military base, European countries have laid down their red lines. Russia, they say, can't block Ukraine's path to the EU or NATO, and no ceasefire on Friday will mean fresh European sanctions. Donald Trump is making optimistic noises, but he's also stressing this may come to nothing. Playing down expectations plays to the man not at the table. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, uninvited and uneasy at the prospect of a deal struck in his absence that he can't accept.
I would like to have ceasefire.
Anna Yarova and her daughter Emilia are invested in the meeting down the road. They're Ukrainians among 1,300 in Alaska who sought refuge from their country's war.
The president of Ukraine wants to save the entire country of Ukraine, which makes sense. But I hope that President Trump will be able to have some positive influence. But I just don't know if that will be possible. I just have to hope. I have to.
You don't know if it will be possible. Why? What would be the... What's the concern?
Тому що ця війна затяглася дуже довго і
This war has been going on for so long, and it's been so terrible that I don't know if the president of Russia will want to stop it.
It is a view that reflects reservations widely held around this summit. There is hope, albeit clouded by expectation.
Well, European leaders are reportedly looking at possible locations for that second meeting we were talking about, which would include Volodymyr Zelensky. The Ukrainian president's lobbying of allies continued today with a visit to Sir Keir Starmer in Downing Street. But back home, there's concern that his efforts and those of Donald Trump in the meeting here tomorrow will come to nothing. Sky's international affairs editor Dominic Waghorn reports now from Kyiv.
As the sirens blare, in Kyiv they wait, as their invader and the leader of the country they thought was an ally meet to discuss their fate. Uninvited, their leader has done his utmost to try and influence the outcome from afar. President Zelensky urgently lobbying allies. Today, Keir Starmer in London to pressure the US president not to be hoodwinked by Vladimir Putin. But will their efforts be enough? The allies believe their meeting yesterday has steered Donald Trump away from talk of land swaps. But he's unpredictable and Putin manipulative. They are all holding their breaths. Ahead of the summit, the fighting has been stepped up. Russia's made advances and Ukraine's launched one of its biggest drone attacks yet on an oil refinery deep inside Russia. We met the commander responsible for the attack in woods outside Kyiv for his security. He's a wanted man hunted by the Russians. If Putin doesn't make peace, General Yuri warned, it will only get more painful for Moscow.
Operations that began in 2022 and continue today will indeed develop if Russia refuses a just peace and stays on Ukrainian territory. Initially, we had a few drones a month, capable of striking targets 100 to 250 kilometers away. Today, we have drones capable of flying 3,000 to 4,000 kilometers.
After all they've been through, Ukrainians are under no illusions, though, about the chances of a breakthrough. As Vladimir Putin's unprovoked invasion has gone on and on, killing so many Ukrainians, they have watched Donald Trump give the Russian leader the benefit of the doubt at almost every stage of his presidency. If he really wanted to end this war, they know he could impose far tougher sanctions on Russia and give them all they need to see off the aggressor. Instead, he has, it seems, so often sided with Russia. Many Ukrainians aren't expecting much from Alaska.
To be honest, I feel nothing because I think nothing will be changed. Trump always says that I finished the war in 24 hours and nothing has happened. And it's, only blah, 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 and it's just words on the wind. So I don't really believe that something will change.
It's impossible to predict unpredictable. That's my answer. So I don't know. No one knows.
There was some good news for Ukrainians today. 84 prisoners of war returned by Russia in the latest exchange. Diplomacy can at least claim progress on that front, even if so far nothing else. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News, Kyiv.
I'm joined now by James Matthews, who you heard from earlier, and also by our Moscow correspondent, Ivor Bennett. James, first of all, interesting what Donald Trump said today about this meeting, about laying the ground for a second meeting that could include Zelensky and European leaders.
Yeah, speaking, I thought, with some confidence that this meeting would take place, and I'm not sure that's what they want to hear in Kyiv and in European capitals, Mark. Throughout this, interestingly, Trump he's kind of downgraded expectations. You know, this business of what appeared to be a peace deal in the making, it's been reduced over time. A feel-out meeting, he called it. White House now talking about a listening session. Trump today said there was a 25% chance it would be unsuccessful. So laying the ground for failure, certainly. I think that's partly due to what he's heard from Zelensky and from European allies, that look, what Putin is likely to put on the table, we think, will be unacceptable to us. And yet, Trump still talks about swapping land. He said this in a radio interview this morning, talking about divvying up land, saying there would be some give and take as to boundaries, lands, etc., etc. That's not what they want to hear in Kyiv. That would be unacceptable to Volodymyr Zelensky. It will reinforce fears that after meeting number one, Trump delivers to Europe and to Ukraine a deal, a Putin-baked deal that's unacceptable to them. And that, in many ways, is worst-case scenario for Europe, for Ukraine.
Yeah, and I have a quick word on this second meeting, if it happens. Putin has always said he doesn't want to meet directly with Zelensky. He doesn't consider him his equal.
Absolutely. So I think a prospect of a bilateral or trilateral meeting between Putin and Zelensky, possibly Trump, is wishful thinking from the US president. You'll remember just last week that Donald Trump initially appeared to suggest that this summit in Alaska with Putin was conditional on a meeting between the Kremlin leader and Volodymyr Zelensky. Then he quickly backtracked on that after the Kremlin poured cold water on the prospect, because, as you say, Vladimir Putin just doesn't see Zelensky as a legitimate leader. On the other hand, I think Putin is acutely aware that Donald Trump can't lose face here. He'll have to have something to show from this summit. And the loose prospect of a meeting with Zelensky could be it. But if that's the case, I think it'll be a bit of a fudge. I think there will be strings attached, as always, when Russia agrees to something that has the appearance of a concession. Because the reality is, Vladimir Putin still has no incentive to meet with Zelensky and to agree a ceasefire.
Right, and presumably President Putin comes here thinking, well, I can either get a deal that Zelensky's simply not going to accept, which would be a very good deal for Russia, or I can buy myself more time. Is that the way, do you think, that he is looking at this?
Yeah, I think the reality is Russia has nothing to lose, everything to gain by coming here. Even by agreeing to have a summit in Alaska, he's already won in some senses. He is a man who's accused of war crimes by the International Criminal Court, and yet he's being welcomed here as a guest on US soil, his first visit here in 10 years. So it's the end of this isolation. His tactic tomorrow, I think, will be to try and convince Donald Trump that the quickest path to peace is a deal on Russia's terms. So that ultimately Donald Trump gives Ukraine a choice, saying, look, accept this deal or you go it alone without US support. And to do that, I think he'll be trying to appeal to Trump's desire for a quick solution, his desire to take credit for it. That's why we've heard the warm words from Putin today, praising Trump's energetic and sincere efforts to find peace. There'll be lots of flattery. And I think also he'll be appealing to his desire to get something else out of it for the US, and that's why the Kremlin's been talking a lot in the build-up about all the business deals that could be done if there's better bilateral relations between Moscow and Washington.
Yeah, James, we've got about a minute left. There is a risk attached here, isn't there, for Donald Trump? I mean, and quite a hefty risk. Agreeing to see Putin without asking for anything, or we don't think he's asked for anything up front.
Well, indeed.
Like a ceasefire.
Sure. And the risk comes in the personalities who will meet in that room. The risk, as viewed by Kyiv and European partners, is Trump on his own, exposed to the master of the dark arts, the KGB negotiator, Donald Trump, a naive US president who has multi-layered weakness. He has vanity. He has an urgent desire for stature for legacy as a president. Time is not on his side. Time absolutely is on the side of Putin, a man who has not changed position on Ukraine throughout Biden's term, throughout Trump's term. It's a tall order for Trump to shake where Vladimir Putin's stands. There's every likelihood this meeting could shape as Donald Trump being played by the old foe.
OK, James, Ivor, thank you very much indeed. That's it from Anchorage for the moment. We'll be back a little later. Now let's go back to Jonathan in London.
Mark, thank you. Back here, an inquest has concluded that a 14-year-old girl who died when she was left alone in a children's mental health unit was unlawfully killed. Ruth Szymankiewicz was in the care of an inexperienced agency worker when she died. The unit was shut down following a Sky News investigation, as our health correspondent Laura Bundock now reports.
We were excluded and completely disempowered. She was isolated, scared and alone. However this is framed, it is fundamentally wrong and needs to change.
Ruth was just 14 years old. She was sent to a secure mental health unit, supposedly to help her with her eating disorder. But despite being on one-to-one observations, she was left alone and took her own life. Her death now ruled as unlawful killing.
When at our most vulnerable as a family, we reached out for help. We ultimately found ourselves trapped in a system that was meant to care for her, to help her, to keep her safe, but instead locked her away and harmed her.
The worker responsible for watching Ruth was on his first shift with no previous experience. Hired by an agency, he used a false name. CCTV showed he frequently left Ruth's side. Active Care Group, who were responsible for the unit, said, "We're disappointed that a third-party company we engaged in good faith explicitly breached the terms of our contract with them, and this played a role in the circumstances leading to Ruth's tragic death. We've not engaged this agency since the incident. The safety and well-being of those we support must never be compromised." Huntercombe Hospital, also known as Taplow Manor, closed in 2023 after an investigation by Sky News and The Independent. The testimonies of patients exposed the overuse of restraint and medication, along with inadequate staffing and training. The ward was missing half its staff the day Ruth fatally self-harmed, with agency workers brought in. Ruth's care was paid for and commissioned by the NHS. Senior doctors at the inquest admitted they didn't do enough for Ruth, with services under pressure and beds being closed across the country.
She was essentially caged. She withdrew more into herself as she tried to navigate and survive months in a poorly trained, understaffed and unsafe ward.
Ruth's family wants her life and death remembered to help other vulnerable children in their moment of need. Laura Bundock, Sky News, Beaconsfield.
And we have asked NHS England to respond to that story. If you've been affected by that report, you can always contact the Samaritans at any time on 116 123 or email joe@samaritans.org. Israel's finance minister has drawn international condemnation after announcing plans for a new settlement in the West Bank, which he said would bury the idea of a Palestinian state. The surge in the number of Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank has long been seen as a major obstacle to peace. And today, Bezalel Smotrich unveiled plans to build more than 3,000 homes, cutting off the West Bank from East Jerusalem. The UK government said the proposal would mark a flagrant breach of international law. Our international correspondent, Anna Magnay, has been speaking to Mr. Smotrich.
Sanctioned by the UK for inciting violence against Palestinians in the West Bank, Israel's far-right finance minister has plenty of friends up here. And that's because his plan to start work on what's known as the E1 settlement, which would connect Ma'ale Adumim in the West Bank to East Jerusalem, is a long-held dream of the Israeli settler movement, and would mean, Bezalel Smotrich says, the end of the idea of a Palestinian state.
Anyone who tries today in the world to recognize a Palestinian state will receive an answer from us on the ground. In the facts of houses, in the facts of neighborhoods, roads, and more Jewish families will build lives.
Minister, if this is the end of a Palestinian state, what do you want to happen to the Palestinian people?
I suggest reading my plan, the decision plan I published in 2017. The future I'm offering to Arabs in Judea and Samaria is much better than any Arab has in Arab countries. Much better for them than if they had had a Palestinian state. I am offering them protection of human rights, freedom and freedom of speech, freedom of religion, property protection, life protection.
This is a 30-year-old idea, but Smotrich is reviving it, given what he says is the support of powerful allies.
Has Benjamin Netanyahu agreed to this plan, and has Donald Trump agreed?
Of course. What's the question?
It is a vow to keep on settling Palestinian land and builds on the parliament's approval last month of a motion to annex the West Bank. Israel Gantz runs the organization which oversees Israeli settlements.
What I do, it will bring a huge benefit for everyone. When I say everyone,
at the moment,
including
though,
the Arabs here.
At the moment in the West Bank, it isn't providing benefits for Arabs. They are blocked from getting to their land. Their land is being settled and taken away from them. You have settlers and IDF killing Palestinians in the West Bank. That is your responsibility.
It's my responsibility, but I think nothing that you said is truth, because today...
Well, we document it all the time.
Yeah, but you know, when you report, you have to report the truth. So
we go to the funerals. We see the children who have been shot by the IDF.
Please let me finish my sentence. You're not reporting about the attacks that came before what you saw.
If Benjamin Netanyahu is on board with this, he's leaving it up to his finance minister to lead the initiative, in the face of international criticism, not least from the UN, which has called on Israel to reverse its decision. But here, the direction of travel is one way.
They should take care of their own people.
Diana Magnay, Sky News in E1 in the West Bank.
And you can watch Stuart Ramsey's documentary on the West Bank by scanning the QR code you can see on screen now. A teenage boy has been arrested after the death of a 13-year-old girl in Huddersfield. Emergency services were called to an address on Sheepridge Road on Monday night, where they found the girl unresponsive. She later died in hospital. Police are treating her death as unexplained and have arrested a 16-year-old boy on suspicion of murder and rape. The man accused of driving into crowds during the Liverpool Victory Parade is now facing a further 24 charges, including 2 relating to victims who were babies. 53-year-old Paul Doyle appeared via video link from prison for the hearing at Liverpool Crown Court. More than 130 people were injured at the celebrations back in May. Severe flooding in Indian Kashmir has killed at least 44 people, with more than 200 missing. More than 4 inches of rain fell in the space of an hour, triggering landslides and floods across the region. Back here, it's been another record day for students receiving their A-level results. The portion of pupils getting top grades rose again, but the north-south divide is evident once more. The regional disparity is highlighted in the percentage of students receiving an A grade or above. London comes out top with 32.1%. The South East is second with 31.2%. At the other end of the scale, in the North East, only 22.9% of students received an A grade or above. The East Midlands was second from bottom at 23.8%. Sky's education reporter Anjan Pierbakos spent the day with students as they opened those envelopes.
Good luck.
Oh, good luck.
A-level results day, and the buzz is back. And results this year are higher than before the pandemic.
I did maths, physics and chemistry.
And how did you do?
I got 3 A's.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I got higher than I was predicted.
So yeah, right now I'm just looking at what courses I can see I can maybe elevate, get better at university.
So an A in maths and then B's in chemistry and physics. I'm going to King's College for physics.
So are exceptionally high A-level grades becoming the new norm? The A-star to A grades have increased to 28.3%, an increase of 0.5% from last year. The difference in regions when comparing this year to last year is clear, with the North East underperforming considerably when compared to the East Midlands. But there were lots of success stories in Birmingham this morning.
A in maths, B in chem and B in physics.
That's fantastic. How are you feeling?
It could have been better, but at the end of the day, as long as I go in uni, it's fine.
It's BB, I guess.
Okay. BB, how are you feeling about that?
It's okay.
Yeah,
it's good.
that's good.
BCC. So,
Okay. How are you feeling?
A little bit disappointed. I could have done better, but you can't change that right now.
There's a big funding issue. Down in London, per pupil, students are funded significantly higher than other areas in the country. And we can't ignore the disadvantaged and the deprivation and the poverty, the impact of the economic crisis that we're still seeing and we're still going through.
Yeah, and was there anything else that I could do to help today?
UCAS headquarters, a hive of activity today. And this year will see more students than ever get their first choice at university. But the pandemic has left its legacy.
Our young people do continue to feel the impact of the disruption that they saw during the pandemic. We asked a lot of young people, their education was disrupted. But, what we've seen this year is actually those collecting their results today had the first of the normal GCSE experiences, so regular GCSE day in the normal way.
It's been a big day for students across the country, with scenes of relief, joy and dismay. But whatever the outcome, there are options for everyone. I'm Jean-Pierre Bacchus, Sky News.
Bosses say time is running out to save the British bioethanol industry, which is in danger of falling victim to the US-UK trade deal. That agreement means up to 1.4 billion litres of American ethanol can enter the UK tariff-free. And the industry here cannot compete. Our business correspondent Gurpreet Narwan reports.
The Green Industrial Revolution, a policy vision milled, fermented and distilled. But here, it's grinding to a halt. We were promised green jobs, but in Hull, they could be getting green job losses. At Vivergo, one of two major bioethanol plants in the UK.
I think what the government is missing out on here is the future growth agenda. We make bioethanol. That bioethanol today decarbonises transport. Tomorrow it will decarbonise marine. It'll decarbonise aviation.
The plant could close in days because of another policy priority, the UK-US trade deal. Signed in May, it allows 1.4 billion litres of American ethanol, a type of renewable fuel, into the British market, tariff-free.
We've effectively given the whole of the UK market to the US producers. If we were to have the same support that the US industry has, if we could use genetically modified crops, genetically modified use, etc., we wouldn't need that tariff. We'd be able to compete. If we had the same energy costs, we wouldn't need those tariffs.
Bioethanol is blended into petrol to help lower car emissions. It's made using plants or crops. Vivergo buys wheat from farmers across Yorkshire and Lincolnshire.
And this is where it arrives. More than 100 lorries pass through here each day, containing about 3,000 tonnes of wheat. That wheat is then tipped into those grain stores behind me. It's milled and fermented, a bit like making beer, and then that fermented mash is distilled, and that's how we get bioethanol, a renewable fuel found in your E10 petrol.
It's been a turbulent process. Vivergo was losing about £3 million a month, even before this trade deal was announced. And Ensus in Teesside is also on the brink. They blame government rules that US companies can exploit to claim a double subsidy. And now, unless the government intervenes, a death knell for an industry and for jobs. 160 at this plant alone.
I moved here after a career in oil and gas for 10 years, partly because I want to be part of the transition to renewable fuels. I can see so much potential here, and it's absolutely devastating to know that this place might be closed very, very shortly, and that all that potential just goes away.
The government says it's sympathetic, but it has just a few days now to come up with a plan. If it doesn't, in this corner of Hull, all will fall quiet. Gurpreet Narwan, Sky News, Hull.
Welcome back to Alaska, this remote corner of the United States, which will be the focus of the world's attention tomorrow. Let's just take you through what is happening in UK time. At about 11:30 a.m., Donald Trump is due to leave the White House, arriving here in Anchorage just after 7 p.m. He'll be flying into Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson, the largest US base in Alaska and a symbolic American military presence in the Arctic. Vladimir Putin is due to arrive at around 8 p.m. UK time, with the leaders shaking hands on the tarmac. They'll begin talks at around 8:30. That meeting could go on to about midnight, and then we're expecting a news conference involving, we think, both presidents at around midnight UK time. So it could be historic, and just the fact the meeting is happening is being chalked up as a win, certainly for a Russian leader who has had the status of international pariah. All eyes on Alaska then tomorrow, and with President Trump, who knows what could happen. We'll be live in breakfast from 7 a.m. tomorrow with rolling uninterrupted coverage from 7 p.m. For now, though, from here, good night.
Mark, thank you very much. And that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we're going to take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview. Tonight, I'm joined by Conservative Home's Deputy Editor, Henry Hill, and the FT's Deputy Opinion Editor, Miranda Green. Among the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of the Telegraph, its headline, "The West must not be cowed by Putin." We'll be back in a couple of minutes.
gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos, analysis, up at 6%. Podcasts, watching us live. Joins us live all in one place, and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
You're watching Sky News. Our top stories this evening. Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin will meet in less than 24 hours for talks which could mark a turning point in the war in Ukraine. An inquest has concluded that a 14-year-old girl who died when she was left alone in a children's mental health unit was unlawfully killed. And Israel's finance minister has drawn international condemnation after announcing plans for a new settlement in the West Bank, which he said would bury the idea of a Palestinian state. A very good evening. Time then for the press preview. It's our chance to take a look at tomorrow's front pages for the first time, and we'll see what is making the headlines tonight with Conservative Home's Deputy Editor Henry Hill and the FT's Deputy Opinion Editor Miranda Green. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. A very good evening. We shall chat in a moment after we've had a look at some of those front pages for you, starting with the Telegraph. Donald Trump's summit with Vladimir Putin leads the paper with a warning from the head of the UK's armed forces that the West must not be cowed by Putin. The Guardian goes with Trump's optimistic assessment that Putin is now ready to make a deal on Ukraine. Part of that could mean, according to The Times, Trump offering Putin economic incentives on issues such as oil and gas. The FT has some good news for the Chancellor with new data showing that a feared exodus of non-dom taxpayers isn't as bad as first forecast. On A-level results day, the Eye says students could be paying £10,000 a year in tuition fees by 2027. The Sun leads with calls from migrants who posted on TikTok advising men how to kill their ex-wives to be deported. The decision by the maker of Mounjaro to triple the cost of the weight loss drug leads the Metro, saying UK users will have to pay £2,700 a year more. And in fact, it's the same story on the front page of tomorrow's Mail. To mark the 80th anniversary of VJ Day, The Express pictures 100-year-old Reg Draper, who was there to witness it, while the Mirror carries this montage of veterans with the simple headline, "Thank you." And the Star says Wayne Rooney has hit back at NFL legend Tom Brady, who questioned Rooney's work ethic while managing Birmingham City. And we are joined tonight by Henry Hill and Miranda Green. It's great to see you both as we head towards this summit in Alaska. It is going to be quite something, I think, but nobody knows, of course. Putin is arriving tomorrow, Trump as well. The two men will meet. Trump has said that there's a 25% chance it may all go terribly wrong. But he's been given very mixed messages today, hasn't he, about how it might all play out. What are your takeaways, Miranda?
Well, Trump intriguingly said that you'd know if the meeting had gone really badly because it would be over very quickly. But what everyone's actually assuming is that several hours will pass because the agenda seems to be growing all the time. I don't know if Henry would agree with this. So where once a couple of days ago it was all a question of, you know, is Trump for real when he's saying there will be land swaps, something that's very difficult for Ukraine to agree with and even constitutionally difficult for Ukraine. Now the agenda seems to have moved on to, you know, how would you define a deal? Because for Trump, it's moved on to the economy. It's moved on to potentially offering some sort of financial incentive for Russia, even for Russian companies, you know, to come to the table and perhaps in exchange offer security guarantees that would be acceptable to the Ukrainians. So the kind of potential for what this deal could involve seems to be growing all the time. But of course, without Zelensky actually there, what can a meeting between Trump and Putin actually achieve other than something that, in a worst-case scenario, stitches up the Ukrainians? And that's, of course, why Zelensky was in Downing Street today, meeting Keir Starmer, being pictured on the front of the Telegraph with his Downing Street mug of tea. you know, because the Europeans want to make it clear to Trump and to America that a deal that, you know, sells Ukraine down the river will not be acceptable to anyone else in NATO outside the US.
Yeah, and in fact, the headline on the front of the Telegraph, the West must not be cowed by Putin. It was interesting, Henry, wasn't it, hearing from Donald Trump earlier today saying that actually the most important meeting will be the second meeting, which Zelensky may be at, which European leaders may be at, which allies may turn up at as well. That's where the real work will be done. He's sort of hedging his bets a bit, isn't he?
Yeah, or somebody in his diplomatic service has pointed out that maybe he should at least pretend that his allies matter and have a say in the discussion. The blunt reality is that America is really the critical factor here. If America did decide, for whatever reason, to pull support for Ukraine, the rest of NATO doesn't really have the industrial capacity or political will to fill that gap, right? So it really is all on the line. I think the challenge is, like, you know, Trump, he's always very confident about these things. He was originally going to have solved this within a few days of starting his second term.
24 hours.
24 hours? Yeah, and that didn't really happen. And the challenge is, if you're not looking at a complete capitulation, Putin really has neither really the room nor the incentive to come to a middle course here. He doesn't have the room because he's taken it away from himself, because he formally annexed, under Russian law, all the territory in Ukraine that he's occupying, and some more. I think all of the easternmost and I forget the word, oblasts, including territory which is still Ukrainian, have been formally annexed into the Russian Federation, which means that actually now he, to give any of that up, would be surrendering what Russia considers to be sovereign Russian territory, which is obviously very hard to do. But also, on the ground, his forces are just winning. They're winning in a really slow, grinding, miserable way, but that's not exactly new to the Russian armed forces. But like just in the last 24 hours, we've seen quite a significant Russian breakthrough around Pokrovsk, and that looks like it could become a real, potentially has to be a real disaster. So what's his incentive? He's getting roughly what he wants. His military is gradually getting better. He's shifted out most of the bad generals. He's adapted to the drone tactics. Like, you need to give him quite a lot of incentives to come to a deal. But the problem is, as Miranda was saying, the Venn overlap of a deal that Putin would accept and a deal that is acceptable to the Ukrainians, I don't think it exists.
Yeah, 230 square miles of territory has been taken just in the last month by the Russians, which is quite something.
And Ukrainian people.
Yeah,
and Ukrainian children. Yeah. So that's the other thing is, you know, you can look at lines on a map, but actually, even if you consider the extraordinary story, which I think is relatively uncovered, I would say, in the media, of the number of Ukrainian children who've been shipped to Russia, you know, older children then sort of being incorporated in the Russian military. I mean, this is scandalous. And so any deal which ignores the human aspect of what Ukraine has currently given up to Russia would also be unlivable for Zelensky, I think.
Yeah. Let's bring in your paper, Miranda, the FT. They've got the headline, Ukraine wary, Putin praises Trump's stance. Interesting, again, hearing from President Putin today as well, who seems quite optimistic. But then, in a way, it's win-win for him. And just by appearing on American soil is a great look for him. You know, shaking hands with the free leader, with the leader of the free world, back out from the cold.
Well, that's right. He clearly has the chance for it to become a kind of rehabilitation for Russia, which, as you say, has been, said in your intro, has been treated as a pariah since the invasion of Ukraine. So I agree with that. And he hasn't actually been to the US, I believe, since 2015, which was the Obama era. So it's a big moment for the Russian president to come. The problem is that Trump seems to be taking Putin's arrival as part of as a sort of compliment. You know, Trump has said a couple of times now, it's showing respect that he's coming to our country. Really extraordinary. And then I think Putin's words today, saying, you know, Trump and America are showing admirable energy in trying to find a solution to the war in Ukraine. It's kind of flattery of the US president. And if we're not careful, it's manipulation of the US president, who does seem to kind of bear the impression of the last person he's met with on occasion. And he's an unpredictable leader of the Western world, right? So we don't really know what'll come out of tomorrow at all.
No. Front page of the Times, Trump eyes economic incentives for Putin, which we've been discussing. Henry, a final thought from you, because we have to think of the Ukrainian people, don't we, right now, watching all of this. And you know, we sometimes forget that Putin doesn't just want to take land in Ukraine, he wants to extinguish Ukraine. He doesn't believe Ukraine should even exist as an entity.
Yeah, Vladimir Putin's view, and the view of quite a lot of people in his kind of cadre who were formerly senior Soviet officers, is functionally that Ukraine happened by accident. You had the Russian Empire, and then after the Communist Revolution, they created the SSRs, the Soviet Socialist Republics, like Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and so on. But they were only meant to be internal divisions. And so you end up with, in 1991, very messy borders. About a quarter of like Kazakhstan's population is ethnically Russian, for example. And yes, his explicit ambition is to take back those territories. Now, Ukraine is one of the biggest, but it's not the only one. And that's the other question about this. If he wins in Ukraine, how many other of those satellite countries, some of which are much harder for us to defend, like in Central Asia, might the Russian military go into at some point over the next 10 years?
OK, thank you both for the moment. Do stay with us. Coming up, if this year's A-level results are at record highs and universities are awarding more places, do they really need to raise tuition fees? Again, we'll discuss that next.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling. War, unrest, revolutions.
It's not his country, it's ours.
They have succeeded for the first time in their country's history in removing a leader from power. No freedom! Sky News, the full story first. There was fighting here, but there's clearly now a lull, and they're using it to bring up more ammunition. This is a mass exodus in which Russia is hemorrhaging some of its brightest and its best. According to the local weather channel, there have been more than 2,500 lightning strikes and flash flooding, all on top of this week's lethal tornado. What stays with you most in this job is some of the people you meet. What is your worst fear about what the Russians want to do to the children?
They're just boosting demographics by stealing young people.
Would you like to take the opportunity, Mr. President, on Sky News to invite Barack Obama to come here? Mr. Trump, are you running for president? Can you confirm it?
We're going to take a look, a very serious look.
On that day, we saw your fighters killing women, killing children. Was that a mistake? Did you go too far? You couldn't control your fighters? The full force of the state is being used to crush any protest. Free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
Another alarm. The mood here is jittery and nervous.
We're seeing the world get more and more divided, and it's our job to try to make sense of it all.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away.
So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's Senior Ireland Correspondent. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace. The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland. Catholics and Protestants now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19, religion's nothing.
Sky News, the full story first.
Fire, shouts the commander. There's a dash to safety.
We've now got to wait inside the shelter to see if there is incoming.
I'm Deborah Hames, Sky Security and Defence Editor.
Should Russia's war with Ukraine escalate significantly, pilots like these could be called upon to go into combat for real.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me, Henry Hill and Miranda Green. Let's talk A-level results. I actually didn't know anyone this time round who got their results. Did you?
I have family friends with kids of that age. But actually, we're braced for next week, in fact, because GCSE results will be more relevant in our household. But yeah, it's a big day for a lot of families. And it's a lot of work. A-levels, personally, I think is the most work you ever have to do at depth and across, several subjects. I don't think it ever gets harder again. So, all those kids who had to open their envelopes this morning, good for them.
Yeah,
but it
the front page of the Telegraph, they've got an interesting angle, haven't they? Universities, to quote, putting bums on seats because the grades have risen.
So essentially, our university sector is in a crisis, and there are lots of institutions that are struggling to make the budgets work at all. And what's happened is that with a lot of kids doing very well at A-level, the more selective universities are being a bit less selective and crowding candidates in. Lots of people will be delighted because they've got a place at a great university this year. But what that means is lower down the kind of food chain of universities, they can't recruit to fill the places, and then you're going to have a lot of stories in the next few months about universities facing bankruptcies, having to merge, courses closing, which won't be great for those students that are left on unpopular courses. So it's really a sign of the market that's been created in higher education becoming so dysfunctional that what seems good news on the day for a bunch of kids who get a place at a great university is actually much worse news for the whole, higher education sector.
And it does lead us very neatly, doesn't it, onto the front page of the Eye. Students face yearly tuition fee hikes to bail out struggling universities. If more kids are going to university, why do they need to put the fees up?
Because universities, the sector loses money on every single undergraduate that it teaches. So actually, the more students...
Well, UK
students, British students that it teaches. Yeah. So actually, the more it takes, the greater the losses. The tragedy of this really is that inflation, index linking costs is usually a good thing, right? Inflation is real. If you don't do it, then in a few years' time, you're going to have fees or taxes that don't really bear much relation to their original circumstances. But this isn't actually going to make a difference. 250 quid a year is not going to come close to closing the gap. I think research from the Russell Group said that they lost £5,000 per humanities undergraduate. Those are people like me who had about 6 hours of contact time. They lose 30,000 on medical, and I think they said they lose 17 on STEM, which is science and engineering. So this is a nominal increase. It's going to make young people and their parents feel a little bit more of the pain. It's going to leave them with that much bit more debt at the end of the... But it's not going to save the sector. The sector needs fundamental reform because this system is trending towards a catastrophe.
How do we do that?
What change the incentive structure. Currently, universities, for exactly the reasons Miranda was saying, have no incentive not to offer as many places as possible, despite the fact that there is not necessarily going to be a payoff for students, because basically they take it, they get the cash, and the cost is split between young people through the student loan book and the taxpayer through the unpaid bit of the student loan book. You need to give universities much closer incentives to make sure they're offering people degrees that are worth it, and fewer of them.
But the other significant change recently is a crackdown on bringing in lots of overseas students because they can be charged much higher fees. And the international students have been propping up our higher education system now for very many years, and cracking down on the immigration numbers because you want to see the whole kind of total go down is crippling the university sector. And the fact is, an English language education at that level is an internationally competitive business. We in the UK are competing against Australia, less so the US at the moment. Actually, lots of American students are coming here. But we actually were really well placed and making a lot of money out of it. But the politics of immigration has meant pressing down on something that was an important income stream for universities and which cross-subsidise our young Brits going to university.
Probably important to note that the charts showing international student numbers from certain countries completely slalom depending on whether or not they get a post-study work visa out of it. And there has been some quite interesting research, including by The Times, in recent months, which has found that an awful lot of universities have been running very low monitoring, effectively scam courses. They've not been checking whether or not people actually turn up to complete their qualifications. So there was a need for a crackdown on the sector. And also, it's simply the fact that if you think about the overall broader British crisis, including my favourite subject, housing, there are currently about 600 and something thousand international students in the UK. That's a city roughly the size of Glasgow. Importing more and more and more of them indefinitely, like the old woman who swallowed a fly, is not a structural solution.
No. OK, we will leave it there. We will speak to you again in a few minutes' time. Thank you both very much. We're going to take a look now at the weather.
Breathtaking views with clear skies ahead. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, the next few days look fairly settled and very warm, although not as hot as recently. There'll be quite a muggy, dry and sunny start tomorrow, but there will also be fog in places and it'll be quite murky over some northern and Irish Sea coastal counties. Some western parts of Ireland will be dull and damp as well. On to Friday morning, looking mostly dry with sunny spells developing widely, but the north will be cloudier with a little patchy rain. It'll stay rather grey near some northeastern coasts too. England and Wales will be very warm. Lincolnshire and Norfolk will see low cloud moving onshore during the afternoon, and Scotland may see the odd shower developing.
Breathtaking views with clear skies ahead. Qatar Airways sponsors the weather.
Plenty more still to come here on Sky News at 11 o'clock. We will have continuing coverage looking ahead to tomorrow's Trump-Putin summit taking place in Alaska. I'll have all the details for you in a couple of minutes.